Hi and welcome to School Shorts with me, Melissa Chan Green, journalist and mum of two, with an episode that I think is going to help people from right across the age spectrum today. We're talking executive functions with one of the world's leading experts, Adele Diamond from the University of British Columbia. Executive functions are basically what allow you to take your thoughts, turn them into actions to achieve the things that you want to do. So, pretty important. But there are a lot of challenges that can get in the way, like forgetting or being distracted or not very good at planning, many other things too. It's also worth remembering as you listen to the ways in which we can improve executive functions in this episode that some children and adults have biological challenges. So for some, it's not that simple. If that's you, I'd love to hear your stories. If you want to message me privately on social media, at SchoolShortsNZ is how to get in touch with me. I'd love your feedback and to know what kinds of topics I should focus on in future. Adele, thank you so much for your time. You are very much respected in this space, and it's an interesting topic, one that I am very personally interested in. Can we just start very basically at what are executive functions and why should parents care about them? And is it best to break those down into specific functions? Should we look at, say, inhibitory control first?
Yes. So executive functions are a collection of different things, including inhibitory control, that you need when going on automatic or relying on instinct or intuition wouldn't serve you well. When we need top-down control, you need to focus. So inhibitory control even is broken down into different parts. Inhibitory control at the level of attention is selective attention or focused attention, being able to inhibit distraction so that you can stay focused on what you want to focus on. Inhibitory control at the level of what's in your head is called cognitive inhibition. It's being able to inhibit thinking about what you're going to do next when you're supposed to be concentrating on what you're doing now, or inhibiting mind wandering or ruminating, going over things that are bothering you. So that you're inhibiting mental distractions. Selective attention is inhibiting external distractions. Cognitive inhibition is inhibiting distractions in your head. And then the third type of inhibitory control is self-control or response inhibition. So that is resisting temptations, thinking before you speak or act, not acting impulsively or without thought. So that could be, for example, not immediately jumping to the conclusion about what somebody meant when they said something or did something, because we can be wrong about that. Or it can be something as simple as not interrupting somebody, but having the inhibitory control to wait, not blurting out the first thing that comes to mind, waiting to have a more thoughtful response, things like that. So those are aspects of inhibitory control.
I can see how so many of those things are so crucial for all of us, but especially children who are in those really crucial learning years. So we'll talk about the impact shortly, but let's get to the next executive functions to talk about here, working memory.
So working memory is holding information in mind and working with it. And if you think about it, you need that for anything that takes place over time, because it always requires holding in mind what happened earlier and relating that to what's happening now. Like oral language, you're not hearing what I said earlier. So if you want to relate that to what I'm saying now, you need working memory. It's also important for like holding on to the question you want to ask me while I'm talking. So you're trying to process what I'm saying at the same time that you're trying to hold on to that question that you want to ask me when I'm finished.
Oh, I've forgotten what I was going to ask next.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Yeah.
No, what I was going to ask is about cognitive flexibility.
That's the third core executive function, and that requires working memory and inhibitory control. Cognitive flexibility is things like switching mindsets. So, for example, let's say you're working on something at home or you're cooking at home, and your child keeps interrupting you to ask questions. You have to switch mindsets. You'll be one way with your child and a different way when you're working or doing the cooking. It's also, though, thinking outside the box, having the flexibility to think about something in a whole new way, to come up with a different solution, to be able to see other perspectives on things. So, if nobody's been able to solve something, can you think outside the box to come up with a completely different way of attacking it? So now we can move forward. Or maybe a new problem has arisen. Can you figure out a way to get around it? Or a new opportunity has come up. Do you have the flexibility to change your plans and take advantage of that? Or are you going to stay with what you were doing? Or even the flexibility to admit you were wrong when you get new information.
Wow. I mean, there is so much just within all of that that I can see that having strong executive functions can really advantage you in life, and having challenges can really be a disadvantage, right?
Yes, in all aspects of life. There's no aspect of life that this doesn't touch on. It's important for being able to get along with friends, for having happy marriage, for doing well in school, doing well on the job. Research shows that in some cases, executive functions are more predictive of how well a child will do in school than either the child's intelligence, the child's IQ, or the socioeconomic status of the parents. Executive functions determine a lot. They also have a lot of effect on our health. They have a lot of effect on our happiness. Adults who have better executive functions say that they're happier. So there's no aspect of life that it doesn't affect.
When you're saying a lot of those examples of executive functions, my mind was thinking about children and those that I know who have challenges with ADHD. Does it particularly affect those people?
Yes. So ADHD is a great example of a developmental disorder that where you see problems with executive function. And whether you have ADHD or not, often children are mistakenly thought to be intentionally misbehaving, when what you're seeing is an inability to stop themselves from doing something that they know is wrong, they don't want to do, and they can't because they don't have the inhibitory control. Often, if a child can tell you what the right thing is and does the wrong thing, we assume that the child is intentionally doing the wrong thing because he knows what he's supposed to do.
Yeah.
But for young children, or for a child with ADHD sometimes, they know what they're supposed to do and they so want to do the right thing, but they don't yet have the impulse control to be able to do that.
And then I can see how that might spiral in terms of I was actually wanting to get to this a little later, but I might now, but I can see how that spirals in terms of their feelings about themselves, their feelings of self-belief, and how that might then continue to snowball and impact other areas of their life and learning.
Exactly. Yeah. But we adults can use cognitive flexibility. And when we get all upset at the child for misbehaving, we can take a different perspective and realize that the child isn't intentionally doing it. Or maybe the child is really hurting inside. And so what we're seeing is an expression of being hurt rather than expression of intentionally misbehaving, right? Because if you expect somebody to attack you, sometimes you attack the other person first, so you'll push them away before you have a chance to push them away. But if you realize that it's not coming from disliking you, but from feeling hurt and worried, then you can react completely differently.
How do you know the difference between, because I imagine people have challenges with some form of executive functions at various stages in their lives over, at different times. So how do you know whether you have a persistent challenge with executive functions and whether you potentially may have ADHD, or whether you're just in a period where you're struggling with a particular executive function?
That's a great question. And often a child or an adult who is stressed will be misdiagnosed as having ADHD. When they don't have ADHD, they just have stress. And so the prescription should be for ways to reduce their stress rather than for medication for ADHD. I think in general, we should err on the side of behavioral approaches. So if somebody is looking like they're having trouble with executive function, instead of first going to the medicine cabinet, maybe we could think about mindfulness or some way to help the person slow down, be less stressed, get more of a handle on themselves, and see if that will help. Or, there are things where you support the person emotionally and socially as opposed to medically, as pharmacologically.
And it's interesting that you speak about even children being in a position where they may be stressed and the impact that may have, because often we talk about stress in adults, but children can feel the pressure of different pressures, I guess, but that can be a factor for them too, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. A baby can be stressed. If the baby senses that you're stressed, the baby's going to be stressed because the baby's going to pick up on your emotion. And children get stressed because they think their parents upset at them, or they think their best friend is upset at them, or they don't have any friends. There are all kinds of things that stress children.
And this is why you talk a lot about connection and relationships and that having such an impact on executive functions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It has a huge impact on everything. It's the most predictive of whether a child's going to do well in school or not is, does the child have good relationships with the teacher? Does the child feel cared about? If you look at programs to improve executive function, what predicts best is, did the child feel like the person doing the program cared about them, etc. Feeling cared about is so huge. It's so important. We all need that. We all need to feel like we're seen and valued and cared about.
If we can go back to those, the three areas that we spoke about at the beginning, inhibitory control. I don't know what it is about that word. My brain doesn't like remembering how to say that. Working memory, funnily enough, and cognitive flexibility. Can we look at those three functions and go through them as to how parents might be able to support in the home?
Sure. There are basically three ways to support any executive function. One, general ways. One is that you can work on training it, which is what you're really asking. What activities can we do to help improve it or challenge it? Another way is to scaffold it, to reduce the demands on it. Now, that doesn't necessarily help improve it, but it helps you to be able to function when you don't have such good executive function. Like, for example, I have a couple of notes here on my table so that I don't have to hold in my working memory everything I want to tell you. I'm scaffolding my working memory so that I don't have to work so hard. And the third way to help executive functions relates to what we were talking about a little bit before, which is to work on things that help executive functions indirectly or impair them. So, for example, stress impairs executive functions. Loneliness impairs executive functions. Feeling happy, feeling proud, feeling physically fit improves executive functions. So you can also work on things that affect executive functions as a way to help them. But
that's so fascinating.
But your question on what exactly parents can do to help executive functions, let me pull up my notes here.
Go to that scaffold, Adele.
That's right. So, for example, for attentional control, walking on a log, for example, is a great way to practice focused attention. And for little children, just walking on a line on the ground is enough of a challenge to to challenge their focus attention. And when they get better, you can make it harder, like balance something on your head while you're doing it. You know, there's lots of ways you could do that. Helping with household chores, like kitchen chores, is a great way to practice focus attention. For young children to pour water into a glass or carry a tray of glasses filled with liquid or measuring beans or whatever, all of this requires careful focused attention. Crafts like sewing or knitting, crocheting, beading, all of them require focused attention. To practice self-control, you can practice waiting. So like before a meal, wait till everybody's served, or wait till the blessing is said before you eat. That just helps children practice being able to wait. Waiting, not interrupting people, waiting until the person speaking has finished what they're saying. Let's see. To practice working memory, a fun game is for one person to start a story, and then the next person to say what that person said and say another part of the story. And then the third person says what has already been said and says a third part of the story. And you're co-creating the story, but you have to hold in working memory what was said before and add your part to it. In fact, I think storytelling is a great way to improve both attention and working memory, because you don't have visual aids in front of you. You don't have pictures on the page. You don't have video in front of you. You have to hold it all in mind. And if you're listening, you have to concentrate to what the person's saying.
And is there evidence, sorry to interrupt, Adele, but is there evidence that this practice does actually improve your working memory over time?
There's evidence that it improves your attention. There isn't yet evidence that it improves your memory. But there is evidence that even more beneficial than reading with your child is the conversation that you have with your child about what you're reading. The conversational back and forth, listening to the child, responding to the child listening to you, builds the child's brain. It literally builds the child's brain. That's been shown. And improves their language, and improves their reading later, and improves their school performance. For cognitive flexibility, there are all kinds of games you can play. So, for example, think of a common object like a table. What kinds of crazy, unusual, outside-the-box things can you do with a table? I mean, obviously, you can put notes on to read. You can eat your food from the table. So, Melissa, what crazy thing might you do with a table?
I might turn it upside down and it can be a boat.
Perfect. You know, you can turn it upside down and play horseshoes. You can use it as a percussion instrument. You can use it to push against the door so that nobody can open the door. You know, there are all kinds of things you can do with it. Just think outside the box. Or think about the ways in which things that we don't usually think are similar. Like, how is a sponge like a hammer? Or how is a carrot like an orange? So you say, well, they're the same color. And then how is a carrot like a cucumber? Well, you say, well, they're both long in shape. And then you say, well, how is a carrot like a potato? Maybe you think about they both grow underground. It's different ways of thinking about carrot, right? So that you're changing perspective. You're focusing on color, you're focusing on shape, and you're just playing a game. You're just having fun. But the best
you can see how people who can do this as adults are people who are really successful in business and problem solving and innovation and all of those things that stem from knowing the difference between a carrot and a potato.
Yeah, that's right. And the best way, I think, to help children improve their cognitive flexibility is to ask for their help on a problem you're working on that you're not sure how to solve. Because, first of all, you're going to be amazed at how creative they are and what great ideas they come up with. But also, they get such pride from being asked. You know, an
Yeah, that you
adult,
value them.
that's right. That's right. It's a great practice, and it helps you because you don't have to come up with all the solutions.
Yeah. And also, I guess you're role modeling to children that there are problems in life and that you have to come up with solutions, and sometimes they're not always obvious, right? I guess you're setting them up to know that too.
That's great. That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good point.
You talk about scaffolding. You were talking about scaffolding before. What are some ways in which parents can maybe scaffold their children at home for learning, or ways in which teachers can scaffold children as well?
Well, often we can artificially have them wait for a moment, because often children know the right thing to do, but what happens immediately is the automatic response, which is wrong. But if you can get them to wait for just a couple of moments, they'll do the right thing. Now, asking them to wait is pointless because it doesn't mean anything to them. But you can come up with ways. So what we did in the lab in an experiment is we had a test where when you see a black card, you're supposed, with a moon and stars, you're supposed to say day. And when you see a white card with a sun, you're supposed to say night. Okay? So we practice with the children. We make sure they know what they're supposed to do. But over trials, they often revert to saying the wrong thing. But I noticed that when they took their time, they always got it right. So what we came up with was we would show the card and we would say, think about the answer, don't tell me. And then they could answer. And how long does it take to say that? Just, less than a minute, right? Less than 30 seconds. But then they get it right. They get it consistently right on all the trials. A program called Paths came up with a great strategy for when a child gets really upset at another child. They say, don't hit the other child. Instead, do what a turtle does and get in your shell. Hold yourself really tightly. Take a deep breath. And that's such a great idea. Because it doesn't say when you get really upset at another child, wait. It has you do something, and what it has you do happens to be a good way to get you to calm down, holding yourself tightly and taking a deep breath. In fact, children like it so much that they bring it home. And when they see a parent starting to get upset, they say, do turtle, do turtle.
I love that. Yeah, because the idea, well, just the word wait for children, even for a lot of adults, is kind of associated with pain, right? Like, oh, wait, it's boring. It's not what I want to do. But if you say, well, do this thing that's going to make you wait, it kind of seems less painful.
That's right. You don't say it's going to make you wait. You just say, do this thing.
Yeah, totally. You have talked about different activities in school that help strengthen executive functions. But what I find quite interesting about what you say too is how different topics, different activities within a curriculum are all teaching executive functions, and that those are things that we need to remember when it comes to what is taught in school.
Yes, I'm a huge fan of music, arts, sports, what we used to call shop when I went to school, carpentry, auto mechanics, things like that. All of them teach executive functions. They teach problem solving. They teach persevering. They teach planning. They teach working memory. They teach all of the executive functions, and they do it in a way that children enjoy. And if children enjoy it, they're going to spend more time at it and work harder at it. So I think it's such a shame that we're having less time for the arts and physical activity in schools. There's so many reasons why those are so important and so good for children. And they train the cognitive skills that we want the children to have for the academic subjects. So it helps them do better in academics.
Do you think it disadvantages those who have challenges with executive functions, like those children with ADHD?
That it disadvantages them? No, I think it advantages them because.
Sorry, I mean to lose those subjects.
Yes.
If we're pulling those subjects out, it's disadvantaging them.
Yes, because often the kids who have so-called developmental disorders are great at these activities. You know, they may be musically talented or spatially talented. Our academic system right now is so verbally oriented that even geometry is taught verbally. So the kid who's really good spatially often doesn't look that great in the classroom. But you give them something like wilderness survival or auto mechanics, they can just soar. And the kid who's great in sports may not be so great in the classroom, but, you know, can show that he's really good there. And you can improve the exact same skills that you want to improve in the classroom in these activities. Teaching kids to think, teaching them to problem solve, teaching them to show self-control, and giving them pride, letting everybody see how great they are.
Do you think then, I mean, we particularly in New Zealand are focusing a lot on reading and writing and maths, and that is because of our achievement levels in those subjects have definitely been trending down to levels that worry most educators. But do you think that in doing so we need to not lose sight of those other subjects? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not. I'm saying more than that. I'm saying not just not lose sight of them, but that your scores are going to go up if you have more of those activities. If you want the test scores to go up in the academic subjects, give the kids more music and art and physical activity.
Right. Yeah, interesting. That's an interesting one for teachers and educators to ponder then, in terms of how long the days are to fit it all in. But you know, you're saying it's so important that it's essential. What is a common myth about executive functions that you wish more parents understood?
Well, first of all, it's not fixed, so it's not as if it can't improve at any age. I think also that we adults often don't appreciate how much of a challenge inhibitory control can be for children. So we are too quick to jump at them for being bad when they're trying their best.
Do you think that a lot of adults perhaps haven't actually ever considered the challenges they may have with their own executive functions and then the impact that has on their children? You know, as adults, do we need to look more at our own challenges, because inevitably that does flow on to how we parent?
Absolutely. And one of the big things is to look at how stressed we are. And we're stressed for all kinds of reasons. We're stressed for outside reasons like financial pressures or work pressures. And we're stressed because of things we put on ourselves, the way we criticize ourselves and hold ourselves up to standards and don't forgive ourselves when we make mistakes, even though everybody makes mistakes. And when we're stressed, we can't be the parent we want to be, and we're not going to have the executive functions we're capable of. And a big problem is impulsivity in parents, right? So you snap at your child and then you say afterwards, I really wish I hadn't done that or said that. So, you know, we really need to work on our own stress reduction and improved executive functions, yes.
In general, do you think that this is an area that is misunderstood and doesn't get enough weight in terms of public discussion?
I don't know, because people talk about executive functions a lot these days, much more than they used to. I don't think it's particularly well understood. I particularly don't think that people understand how that you can improve it. You don't give up on a child because they don't have good self-control or good working memory. You just help them improve it. And if they can't improve it past a point, there are all kinds of ways to scaffold it so that they can succeed even though they have trouble with it. I think we need to start with the basic assumption that every kid is going to succeed. And all we have to do is figure out a way to help that child succeed. And it's on both of us, the adult and the child. If what I'm teaching you, you're not learning, it's not just your problem, it's my problem, because I'm not presenting it in a way that you can learn it. If I start with the assumption that I know you can learn this, then we'll work out a way that you can learn it. And we do that with a lot of other things. So when toddlers fall when they're walking, we don't say, I give up on you and you get a D in walking. We say, I know you're going to be able to do this. You didn't do it today, but I know you're going to be able to do this. Why don't we say that with everything? You didn't get this math problem right, but I know that you're going to be able to do this. And if the way I taught it isn't a way that makes sense to you, let's figure out a way that does make sense to you. And why is it that you're not understanding it?
Yeah, and that's a really good point, and probably something we can think about as we get older too, that, you know, eventually you'll get there if you keep practicing. It's something that we remember when, as you say, when babies and toddlers, and we kind of lose sight a little bit of that later on.
And you need to have patience with people like me who are getting older, whose executive functions are getting worse, and so our working memory goes down, etc. Yeah.
Well, is that something that does, you know, scientifically happen with age? Executive functions change.
Yeah. Executive functions and memory are the first things that tend to go in aging. It's a normal part of aging. It doesn't mean you're going to have dementia. Everybody has it to some extent, and it's just a normal part of getting older. Prefrontal cortex, which is the main area of the brain for executive functions, is the last in and the first out.
Wow. Okay, here I thought I was doing a podcast for parents of children who are in school, but this one appeals to all demographics. Adele, thank you so much. We've covered quite a lot of ground. It is a huge topic, though. Was there anything else that you think we haven't mentioned that you would like to say before we finish?
No, I don't think so. I just think I emphasize that we shouldn't be so hard on kids. I think we also need to not be so hard on ourselves. You know, everybody makes mistakes. And it does, just because you make a mistake doesn't mean you're not terrific. We all do that. And so be kinder on yourself and don't be so self-critical.
Yeah, a good one for everybody to remember. Adele, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time.
No problem. Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. If that topic was helpful for you and you'd like to hear more, please do like and subscribe. It sends me that feedback. School Shorts is all about supporting busy parents who want their children to thrive. Follow on social at School Shorts NZ for fun ideas, helpful resources, and exclusive giveaways.